This investor owned a rental property in Baltimore, Maryland that had built up equity over the years. And instead of selling that property to access that capital, he refinanced it through a DSCR cash out refinance, pulled out the equity from the asset, and kept the rental property in his portfolio. No tax returns, no W-2s, and no personal income was required. The property qualified for the loan. Let me break the whole thing down. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another deal of the week. If you are new here, my name is Ricardo Carrillo. I run RC Lending Advisors. We are a nationwide mortgage lending company that helps clients all across the entire US get financing for both residential and commercial real estate. Whether you're looking at buying your first home or if you're scaling your real estate portfolio, my team and I will walk you through the entire process from A to Z. The whole point of these videos is to show you the real deals with real numbers about our real clients and exactly what it is that they are doing to structure these deals so that you can understand what is actually possible when you're doing this the right way. This deal was a DSCR cash out refinance that we did for our client on an investment property that they owned in Baltimore, Maryland. And it's one of those deals that I really want investors to understand because most investors have equity just sitting in their rental properties. It's sitting on the sidelines. And I don't think that a lot of investors realize how easy it is to actually access it. The property is a single family. It was a single family residence, and the investor lives in Maryland and was also operating this property as a rental. It actually appraised at $148,000. We did a DSCR cash out refinance. The loan amount on that ended up coming out to $111,000. And it put our loan to value ratio at 75%, which is pretty standard for most caps on this kind of program. We were able to lock them in at a 7.3% interest rate on a 30-year fixed, and it left our principal and interest at $766 a month. Now, the loan also had a 3-year prepayment penalty, which is really important, which is pretty common on DSCR loans. Now, banks price loans more aggressively depending on what your commitment is for that prepayment, right? So if you have a soft commitment and the client knows, the client's going to hold this for 3 years, after 3 years, there's no prepayment penalty, banks will tend to give you pricing that kind of matches that. So when you take a longer prepayment penalty, you end up getting better pricing. Now, it's important to know that because if you don't want a prepayment penalty or we know we're going to sell the property, DSCR might not be the best product. But if you're looking at holding properties long-term and the property is actually performing, a prepayment penalty is typically a non-issue. You get this flexibility of qualification, and so most people end up taking it. Now, I do want to talk about the real reason as to why a DSCR cash outs make a lot of sense for a lot of different investors who already own performing rentals. And it's because when you have equity in an investment property, you have two ways that you can access that equity. You could either sell it or you could either refinance it. Selling means that you're going to trigger these tax gains that you would have on this, the property, and you lose the cash flow. So, does it make sense? You're going to get more money out of the deal, but now you have to go find a new place to deploy the capital. Whereas when you refinance, you're pulling out of the equity without selling, and that allows you to keep the property cash flowing. You keep the asset on your balance sheet and it's cash flowing in your pocket. For most investors, refinancing is actually a smarter play because you keep a long-term appreciation over time. You also keep the rental income and you get to activate the equity in the future when it's just there doing nothing for you. That's why the DSCR piece is really important, because what makes this work for serious investors is that you don't have to qualify conventionally. You don't have to get paperwork. You don't have to get tax returns. You don't have to get your income. It makes it so streamlined for an investor who just says, can we just talk about the property and not about me? Because it makes it a lot easier when you're wanting to scale your real estate portfolio. And that's why it's really important. I love talking to real estate investors about this kind of program because a lot of them just don't even know that it's a thing. And if you've been writing things off the way that a normal real estate investor does, then your tax returns are not going to show what you actually make. And every additional rental that you buy could actually hurt you with conventional financing because of how banks calculate qualifying income on rental properties. So it's really important to understand that difference on why someone would use a DSCR loan over a conventional loan. And it's because the lender is going to look at the rental income of the property against the payment. They're looking for a 1-to-1 ratio. That means if your rental income equals your monthly payment, you have a 1-to-1 ratio. Tax returns are irrelevant. Other properties that you own are irrelevant outside of making sure that you make your payments. Your debt to income ratio, how much debt do you actually have, also irrelevant for this kind of program. This is why DSCR is one of the cleanest tools for scaling a real estate portfolio. Every property is pretty much its own deal, and none of them are going to limit the next one. Now, here's where we actually get into the strategy behind deals like this. When you pull cash out of a rental through a DSCR refinance, you get the capital straight to your pocket. Now, what you do with that capital determines whether it's going to make sense to do that refinance or whether it doesn't make sense. And investors who use cash out refinances the right way are using that money because they want to go acquire more real estate, or they want to fund renovations on a deal that they have, or maybe they want to pay off some higher interest debt that they have. So there's various options you can do. The bank's not going to restrict you on what you do with this money. It's just that you as an investor are recycling it, recycling equity into more equity. They're not using it to go fund a lifestyle or a vacation. This investor pulled the capital out in order to position himself for a new purchase of another rental property. This is what allows keeping your rentals producing income every single month, paying down your principal. As long as you make sure that the numbers still make sense from a refinance, the property is going to continue to appreciate, and the cash that was trapped in the property as equity is now actually liquid, and you can deploy it on any other real estate. Utilize the bank's money and not your money in order to scale your real estate portfolio. Most investors actually get stuck on this because they think that their cash position has to be fixed. When they look at their bank account, that's the budget. But if you have rental properties with equity in them, that's actually money that's also trapped. Just needs that right loan program in order to be able to come out. This is why a DSCR cash out refinance is one of the cleanest ways to recycle that equity without messing with your primary residence loan, without messing with your personal credit profile, or even the rest of your portfolio. The rental just keeps producing and you get to unlock the money that was already yours. Now, this is exactly how investors continue to buy more real estate while everyone just continues to sit on the sidelines waiting for cash to fall out of the sky. And when that happens, let me know. Because if you have equity sitting in a rental property and a deal that you can't pull the trigger on because you're actually waiting on capital, you need money to go deploy it into the deal, this is exactly why you need to be having a conversation with us. You can go to rclending.co, or you can find me on my Instagram at Richie the Lender. My team and I work with investors just like this all over the country. I appreciate you guys so much for watching. And if you haven't seen my other deal of the weeks, make sure that you click either here or here to check out those last week's videos. I always talk about different loan programs every single week. I will catch you guys in the next deal of the week video.